I'm all right. How are you?
Cool. I'm good. I'm good. Um, yeah. So games. Yeah, I definitely wanted to talk to you more about that. So I am recording. If you want to just shoot the shit for a minute, I can
Okay.
like take that off. But yeah,
Yeah, you said you had a whole bunch of
topics.
topic lists. Yeah.
Yeah. So I was thinking uh, Legend of Zelda because you wanted to get into that, and
Mm.
then
You
like
wanted to do Elder Scrolls.
yes, Elder Scrolls, and then I thought like if you like did you play a lot of I was thinking about the older games like the uh like Super Nintendo and like the older generation stuff. Like I don't know how much you can talk about that or how much you've
Yeah,
been
I grew up on the original gray box.
dude. Dude. Yeah, the first one I the big one I remember was GameCube. That was the first one. I had an older cousin who had it, and so that was the one I got to like sneak on.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, that was my like fourth console. Like
Mm.
um I've got a couple of things just sitting right here, a couple of old cartridges. Uh
Yes,
it's
the
Sarge's
N64.
Heroes and was this like WWE Royal Rumble?
Mm, mm.
No, WWF. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, as far as my generation goes, like I'm familiar with the Nintendo, the N64 cartridge, but I never played the what was that? Was that Super Nintendo?
Yeah, that's the Super Nintendo. Right now, I think the most popular avenue of playing that outside of like having a Wii or something or
Mm.
whatever the new thing is to use an emulator. Um, and so like that's not uncommon. But
Like for
it
PC?
yeah. So folks will play Legend of Zelda: Link to the Past on that, and other older games like Star Fox.
Mm.
So yeah, I'm familiar with stuff before even that. So
Yes. And then I became familiar with it when it came along in like Super Smash Bros. And I got to like play it without knowing like the original game.
yeah, like who are these people? What like
Yeah, or the newer versions. Like the first I played Star Fox with where it was him and that girl Fox.
Crystal?
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah.
Uh
Major crush on Crystal.
huh. So do a lot of people. It's
She was
it,
cool.
it was it was a bit of a phenomenon. It was kind of like like when Who Framed Roger Rabbit came out. It's like that's same kind of thing happened with Jessica Rabbit and all
Mm,
that. This is
yeah, yeah.
and who was it? Babs from uh
It's the monkey game.
Space Jam.
Oh, Space Jam. Okay. Oh
Yeah,
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 yeah. The hot ones.
yeah. It's like
The
it's just cartoons, people. Like my gosh.
that does not stop them. And then nowadays it's people are going retro, actively going back to like
Are
Velma
they
and
really?
yeah. That's
Oh
that's
my
a
gosh.
that's a living meme,
Hmm.
or that's one that's out there at least.
Yeah. So, like, I'm seeing people get like really into retro gaming, like retro, like way back. So, like, people are grabbing um, boards out of uh, out of the gaming cabinets you'd see in an arcade, and hooking them up to their computers and their monitors. Like, the board is this big,
Mm,
and it's just full of chips and all this stuff. It's like, okay, I'm pretty sure
awesome.
you could have, poured all that code into an emulator and you'd be able to pull it off. But it's like
Yeah.
they just want to go full retro. Like they've got a pad that they've hooked into it, so they have all the joysticks and the real buttons.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Just
They want a real the whole building experience with it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
And there's even a button to put more coins in.
Oh, that's almost. Let people do as they will, I guess.
Yes. Or as they must.
Yes, 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 yes. That's I guess that can be our new like coin.
Yeah,
Coin.
I watched that. I watched that the other day with my parents. It was hilarious.
Mm.
Because he must.
Okay,
Oh,
what was that originally from?
that's from Blast from the Past.
Okay.
It's Brendan Fraser. His dad is Christopher Walken.
Mm.
Um, and they raise him in a fallout bunker. Um, and so when he's 35, he finally comes out of the bunker and he's experiencing real life. Um, and so he sees the baseball game, and his dad had explained to him what baseball was because he can't do baseball. They have no room. And so he's telling him the story about people going around the baseball diamond. It's like, but why does he go to third? And he just says, he's like, well, it's part of the rules. It's like, yeah, but why? It's like, because he must. And so he goes and he actually visits a baseball game, and he stands up as the guy runs to third. He's like, because he must. You have to see it to understand it. Oh, okay, I get it now.
Mm.
Everyone's like, okay, sit down. Because he must.
That's cool.
Yeah.
That's
So
cool.
I started turning that into a meme on the Discord. I
Hey,
put the
fair enough.
picture on there where it says, "Why does man look at the sky? Because he must." And it's just him like, yeah.
Fair, fair. Um, okay. So I mean, are you looking at the memes that they're posting in the Discord?
I have been, yeah.
Yeah.
Not today because I was in too many conversations.
Mm.
I was on the Discord with Ginger Bill uh,
Mm.
for a good couple of hours, and so I was just stuck in conversation. And unfortunately, that conversation also kept me from seeing the video when it first came out, so I
Mm.
couldn't participate in the little chat going off on the side.
It was good. I
Um,
liked it.
are you on the Bridges of Meaning?
Yes, yes. I almost exclusively only post in the memes, or at least it was like that for a couple months. Um,
Okay.
like I was completely anonymous and everywhere but the meme page. Um, and then I started posting stuff for sorting myself out. But yeah,
Ah.
besides that, exclusively uh,
Do you
meaning.
go by a different name on there?
No, it's Shane Allen. It's yeah,
Oh, okay. So it's the same name.
yeah,
All
yeah,
right.
yeah. I
Yeah,
posted one a little while back.
it's is there anything you wanted me to see recently?
Um, no, I'm just interested in the culture that's
Oh.
there. Yeah.
Well, recently it's been a kind of Protestant Catholic
Mm.
um uh friendly meme
Meme
battle where it's
fest.
just
Yeah,
like you've got like call and response of these basic memes.
yeah, yeah. Give me
So,
1 second here.
okay.
Un momento. Okay, duck. Set to switch rooms.
Recently I posted a a version of Sound of Silence by Simon and Garfunkel in major key, and I said I have no words for how uncomfortable this makes me. It's like the original is extremely unnerving, like as a concept, because it's like subtle and you've got a whole bunch of subtext of what's going on in the story of that song, but then you have it in major key and it's like not supposed to be happy. So it's even creepier. You are completely backlit.
I
only see
see
a
that. I
silhouette.
see that. All right, let's fix that.
If you sit on the other side of the room, it might work,
Yeah.
or at least facing the wall or window.
All right, mission share.
I put a lamp behind my monitor.
Yeah, yeah. No, that is a good idea.
I didn't want the ring light thing. Andrea was bringing that up earlier. Is like, oh yeah, sorry, my ring light isn't on. I'm like, those things make people look like aliens. You've got this big
Yes.
ring reflecting in people's eyes. It's like, okay, no.
No, yeah. I will not be doing a ring light.
Yeah.
That just would not fly.
Yeah, and I look a lot warmer with this light. I changed the light bulb. This one's a lot more orange. The other
No,
one's
I
just
like it.
a plain white. Um,
Sure.
so how much of the Zelda story were you able to digest?
So, I have been a fan like since I was a kid.
Mm-hmm.
And I know, so I basically know, you know, it's Link with he's saving Zelda,
Mm-hmm.
and Ganon either has Zelda or he's he's the antagonist. So
Yeah.
Ganon's the antagonist, and then um, and he goes to save her. Like that's, I mean, I've played through um, the Ocarina of Time and Wind Waker,
Mm.
and
Okay.
then some of Majora's Mask. I didn't. I want to say I played through Ocarina of Time, but I think there was a glitch when I was playing it when I was a kid, and I
Mm.
didn't get past the. It was either a glitch or some difficult part in the water temple uh, that I did not
Oh,
get past.
okay. Yeah, that'll stop people. Like there's certain levels in certain games that will stop people from playing, and they'll forget about it, and so they
Mhm.
won't go back to the game. I had the same problem with Metroid Prime 2, I think,
Mm.
where the final, like I was stuck on the final boss because you have to use every resource you have, like
Mhm.
all of the power-ups, and I I just couldn't do all of that thing and maintain my level of health. And so I always died. And
Mm.
so it just got like, if you don't 100% that game, it's extremely difficult to beat the final boss. So in the water temple, the levels and changing things is very difficult. You're talking about the water temple when you're an adult.
Yes.
Okay, yeah, yeah, that's extremely difficult. Um, it's probably one of the most hated levels in video gaming because it's so much backtracking up and down.
And that almost makes it like one of the best, or a good one at least.
I guess it's a legitimate challenge. Yeah, yeah. You're trying to work out the puzzle because the entire place is a puzzle instead of just having a puzzle here and there.
Mhm.
Um, where the same thing happens in Majora's Mask. So I'll warn you about that. The water temple there is a whole bunch of, instead of water levels, it's water currents, and so you're trying to go in the right direction, and that's just as infuriating because you'll get swept up in the wrong current and end up
Mm.
like 3 chambers back, and you're gonna have to do everything all over again.
Mm.
So that's infuriating. But Majora's Mask is because you had mentioned earlier that you wanted to play that.
Mhm.
It's a good one, but it's very repetitive, and that's what my brother stopped playing it because you're doing the same 3 days over and over again. But if you do that properly, it doesn't seem like that much of a chore
Right. Once
because you're doing each section one at a time.
Right. And I definitely like more difficult games
Mm.
nowadays, especially. Um, like just turning it on hard mode just to get the, like I did Witcher. I started doing it on the harder difficulty, and it was
Mhm.
more fun. Like it wasn't the as like I couldn't just sit back. That's basically the difference. I couldn't just sit back and like play the story.
Uh,
it was like the difficulty, and then maybe like the way I thought of it was like the story was the prize for beating these levels.
Yeah.
Yeah.
See, a lot of games for me is I just put it on easy because I'm not interested. I'm
Mm,
not interested in doing the same level over and over and over again, just dying all the time. It's like
yeah.
I want to get through, not because I don't want any challenge, but because I want to know the story. Like that's the way I've been since I was little. I'm just like, well, what's going on? Why? Like that kind of thing. And so like a whole bunch of multiplayer games don't really hold that much meaning to
Right.
me. So I gravitate for stuff like if it's got a good story, I'll go for it. That's why I was really disappointed when all of the first person shooters started to gravitate towards multiplayer instead of actually investing in a good story. And so they just like the Battlefield games didn't really have a story. They had missions in which things happen and you kind of understand the through line,
Right.
but there's no overarching story. You have no idea
Right.
what's actually going on in the Battlefield world. It's just
Right.
this generic, oh, we're fighting Russians this time. Oh, we're fighting I think at one point we were fighting the Chinese at one time. It's like
Right.
I think that was Battlefield 2 or something. We were fighting the Chinese for some reason. It they never explained anything. It was all an avenue towards getting
Mm.
you to multiplayer.
So in Battlefield, were there like tidbits of story in the like in battles, or
Not
how
in
does?
battles. No, there was tidbits of story um within the cutscenes in between. That's why Battlefield Bad Company was such a hit. That's a legitimate story.
Mm,
You're following four guys around through the eyes of one of them, and it's your team working together, and it's actually kind of funny, and because they're ridiculous. Their entire dynamic is ridiculous. You got the generic black cop kind of guy who is basically uh like from Lethal Weapon, like I'm 3 days from retirement. That's
right.
like
The
he's
hell am I doing
awesome.
here?
Yeah. So that kind of guy, and he just wants to go home and fish with his family. Like, but every single time, something comes up, and he's just like, fishing would have been boring anyway, and he just leaves. And he goes and he goes and fights and helps the guys out. And it's just like he's got to do it. And you've got Haggard, who's just this idiot who blows everything up, and you've got Sweetwater, who's the nerd who actually understands what's going on around him. And then you've just got the new guy, who's the new guy who does everything because everyone makes
Mm,
him do it.
mm.
So it was a legitimate storyline, which is why the Battlefield Bad Company thing took off. I just wish they would keep that going, but they kept going into the serious Battlefield stuff from like 4 and 5 and 6 and all that. It's
Mhm.
just it's just another war game.
Yeah.
It's like we've got war games. Battlefield Bad Company was something new.
Yeah, that was
There was
cool. I think, yeah.
it brings in that kind of Hogan's Heroes kind of thing where you've got the silly fun guys in the middle of World War II. Um, but yeah, it's segueing back to Zelda. So the plot, as far as the timelines go, is that in Skyward Sword, um, that's the beginning of the story. None of the loops have happened yet,
Mm,
and so actually, I think it might be on the second loop or whatever, because it's a continuation from what happened before. So the great evil was defeated by someone before, but it wasn't a loop yet. So it was defeated by like generic hero,
mhm.
and there's a goddess that kind of holds everything together, who is not a part of um, the trinary goddesses that
Right.
made the land, which everyone basically learned through Ocarina of Time. That's at the beginning of that. And uh, so you become a facet of the hero, and Zelda becomes the embodiment of Hylia, who is the fourth goddess that's kind of holding everything together. And so she becomes the reincarnation of Hylia every single time.
Mm.
And you become the reincarnation of the hero. And that's because the bad guy at the beginning, when you defeat him, he curses you to this loop. And he said, like his anger will always manifest, and these two other people will always have to come back to fight it. And his name was Demise, I think. And so he obviously looks like Ganondorf, and so that aspect keeps going through all of the iterations of evil. And
Okay.
then you've got the hero and the princess every
Okay.
single time. And that loop was broken in one of the timelines.
Okay. So was Zelda's the goddess, was she a princess, or was she like a just a like
she she
an
was
Athena character?
she was the daughter of the guy who was in charge. So they were on this
Mm.
island that's floating there. You could basically call him the mayor. So she was the daughter of the mayor. So she was technically like a princess.
Mm.
At when that all started out.
Mm.
I don't know his official position. You might be able to figure that out, but I don't remember it because I didn't play that game
Huh.
because I didn't like the game. Like that, the whole concept of the game didn't didn't jibe with me because on one hand they wanted it to be the beginning of the story. On the
Right.
other hand, part of the story was showing all of this stuff that happened in the past. It's just like you can't have both. So it got kind of convoluted, but that's where they put it in the timelines. Is they put that
It's
as
I mean, it sounds interesting as a as an idea.
yeah. And I had shared, I gotta find it on Twitter, but I had shared a timeline that I had kind of figured out. I said none of this happened, um, and it was a storyline between four guys.
Okay.
So um,
Here,
I
let me
got
fix my chair situation real quick,
okay.
and then
And
yeah.
I'll see if I can find my link. I posted. There it is. Okay. Yeah, I actually posted this to that Undying Nephilim guy.
Not that chair. Okay, I was falling, and now I'm not.
All right, I'm going to. Could you give me screen sharing
Permissions?
for a second?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's just to show the picture. Hold on. Come on, work with me. There we go. Okay, so this picture is this picture is there's a couple of games in the timeline called um, the Four Swords Adventures, and so like you've got four swords in one spot, four swords in another spot, and it it keeps bringing up this idea of these four heroes.
That was
Well,
that was actually my favorite one. Was the Four
yeah.
Swords Adventures? It was the first one that I was like, yeah, yeah. That was probably one of my favorites.
And so when I looked at that and then I saw the timeline split, I'm like, wait a second. The different aspects of the links that pop up in these stories kind of correlate to these timelines. So it would actually make more sense for these to be parts of certain people's timelines. And so I was looking at it and went, okay, so you've got these four guys. They're not all Link. It's just Link is the name of of the hero of the story. Whenever these stories are told, and so it goes. Blue Link is in the Link to the Past.
Mhm.
And you've got Red Link in the Oracle games, and then uh, you've got Green Link in these two games, but um, these two these two games are kind of shared with other with other with other adventurers, because
Okay.
like more than one thing is going on at the same time. And so I had kind of culminated it all together, because if you look at the way that if you look at the way that the timeline moves, it's it's clear that there's different kinds of links,
Hmm.
because some of them have more of a personality than others. Some of them are more straightforward. Some of them are more stoic. um
Okay, so I guess that brings up a question for me.
hmm,
Uh, is so do you think that's okay? The different types of links. Do you think that's purely just a developer thing? Like the people who developed it just happen to like a timeline, like thinking about it from the timeline, like does it is that
it
just a developer thing, or do you think you can call them different links?
uh Both.
Yeah. Yeah.
So the timeline is entirely retroactive. That's what a lot of people have issues with, is that the timeline doesn't make sense. It's like, well, yeah, of course it doesn't make sense, because it was applied after the fact. Like a whole bunch of the old games are in an entire timeline where Link dies in the Ocarina of Time. It's like, that's not even a prospect people want to bring up. It's like, wait, what do you mean Link dies? It's like it leaves possibility for that to happen. Um, and and so it, but they also leave open this entire timeline where the cycle is broken. It's like, why would you have a part of the timeline where Link dies, and then you'd have the other side of the timeline where Link breaks the cycle. It's like, this is supposed to be cyclical. It's supposed to keep going forever. That's the whole point of a cycle. But um, it kind of comes to a point, because looking into like Eastern philosophy and like Buddhism and that kind of thing, it is cyclical, but there is a culmination eventually. Um, it does come to a point, and some would call it nirvana, some would call it a singularity, or things like that, and depending on who you ask. But uh, when it comes to storytelling, it's only going, like, when it comes to storytelling in Japanese like games and stuff like that, like the perfect example is the Dark Souls and Demon Souls
Yes.
games,
Yes. Yes.
is that it just keeps going and going
I was
and
gonna ask
going,
you about that.
and it's an endless cycle. And even from the beginning, you're kind of questioning, wait, when did that actually start, or was that a part of a cycle by itself?
Yeah.
And so
I
that's part of the
really
reason.
I just really wanted to ask you about Dark Souls
Oh
and
yeah.
Demon Souls and what you like. We thought it would continue though.
it, I liked the game. I liked that it challenged you,
Mhm.
and that and that you could progress even through failure,
Mhm.
instead of starting over.
Mm-hmm.
There was something entirely different about being challenged by that game. That's probably why it worked, because you you don't you don't lose everything. You're so used to a lot of these games, they start you over at the beginning. They don't give you a chance. You lose all of your stuff and that kind of thing. And that this one like allowed you to grow while failing, and it was a different experience.
Okay.
Um,
And so was there, what was the, so growing while failing, like there was, like, can you just like give me your thoughts on that? Like a little
uh,
bit more?
growing while failing, like you dying all the time is it feels like, okay, I didn't figure that. The only part at which in that game it felt completely unfair was when you get entirely surrounded, or
Right.
you have two forces attacking you at the same time, because it's a rhythm game. You have to do the rhythm of attacking and dodging
Mm-hmm.
with whatever you're kind of dancing with. Well, the issue becomes, if you're dealing with two things, you're dancing with two people, and you're going to be stepping on some toes, or they're going to step on yours, is more likely. And so you dodge one person, and the other one strikes, and you're in the middle of a dodge, and they just stab you. So it's like it's Smog and someone else. It's like you're facing this big executioner guy and the Dragon Slayer. So this huge guy who's like charging through the stage, and the other one who's zipping around it. It's like it's so hard to balance what's going on there, and you have
Mm-hmm.
to take out one at a time.
Yeah.
And so that's where it kind of feels overwhelming. So you
Yeah.
have to kind of cheese the system and figure out a way to get them to halt or stop, or pick
Like
one to
draw them
fight
out
at
of
a
the crowd or
time.
something. Yeah.
Yeah. And so that's where it kind of feels unfair. That and some of the platforming stuff, because it's like they make you do platforming in a game that has really bad jumping. So um, the 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 idea of the challenge on a flat level playing field, it works extremely well in that game, because they will surprise you. They will, and you will learn from that surprise, and then you won't be surprised the next time, and you will be able to block, and you will be able to defend yourself.
Mhm.
And then you'll learn, hey, there's a blind corner, I'm probably going to be attacked. And you start to get into those patterns and start learning uh, learning the dance, because each enemy
Mhm.
was very unique. There was types of enemies, and you could figure out, like, okay, what's their pattern. This is a big guy. Big guys usually have a big mallet. Big mallet has a long wind up time. If I see him going like this, I know to leave. And so there's a whole lot of physical learning,
Yeah.
and it really incorporates like the martial arts mindset. If I see someone's shoulders rise, I know that they're going to try to punch me,
Right. Right.
that kind of thing. And I did a little bit of martial arts here and there. It was not very consistent, but I learned at least that much. You see somebody move forward, you check where they're going to move. And and that was incorporated, as well as it being difficult,
Mhm.
because you would die, but they give you an opportunity. You left this thing behind, this green orb, where you could pick up what you lost in death. That gives you, one, an incentive to go right back to where you failed and to learn from that, and two, have an opportunity to make up for it.
Mhm.
Because if you grab that back, you get all of the money. You basically, you lose money every time. So you get that money back from that failure, then you feel a small accomplishment, like, okay, I can leave, or I can keep fighting, because I got what I lost. And so it gives you just enough to play with to keep you moving forward incrementally without it being overwhelming.
Right. 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 Yeah.
And not a lot of games pull that off well, and that's probably why Dark Souls became so popular, because
Hmm.
it did it well. It was really mean about it, but it did it well.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I remember playing it like, and then once you get your soul back, your souls, and
Hmm.
then like then it's basically continuing until you get tricked the next time, and then
Hmm.
you go solve the trick and then continue.
Or stupidly fall off a cliff,
Right.
because that happens all the time.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or get poisoned by something. It's like,
Hmm.
and you try to figure this stuff out, and then you're like, okay, I know I'm going to be poisoned here. That means I need to have a
Right.
cure with me. And it's like
Right.
you've
Or
got,
like dodge roll off a cliff.
yeah,
Yeah.
or trick whatever's coming after me to fall off a cliff or something. And yeah, it's little things you learn along the way, and
It's a good one.
and adapting. Um, to where Legend of Zelda is very formulaic, even though nearly every game changes. So from the very beginning, it was just going in four directions and picking up items,
Hmm.
and then attacking in four directions and avoiding it, avoiding projectiles. And so it's very basic, but there's a clear line of progression, because each item is each item allows you a certain level of freedom. You get the bombs, you can open up doors. The you get the raft, you can go across water. And so, or you get the ladder, you can go across small gaps. And so it gives you levels of freedom. But the difference that they were trying to bring back from from the first one to Skyward Sword is they wanted to allow you to go through every dungeon by itself. So you can technically, if you want, you can go straight from the beginning and fight Ganon. If you want. It's a really bad idea, but you can do it,
I
and
didn't
people
know that.
have. Um, so it it gives you full freedom, but it's the implementation that kind of fell flat in certain areas, because uh, there's a certain level of storytelling people expect from ever since I think Link to the Past. People want to know what's going on, and if you run from the start all the way to Ganon and somehow beat him, you have no idea what's going on. So, and there's whole parts of the game that you can
Right.
skip. You can skip entire parts of the game. So that's why things like A Link to the Past and uh, Majora's Mask and Ocarina of Time were were so successful, as balancing story and gameplay, because each item you got was a key.
Mm.
Instead of just allowing you a little bit of mobility here and there and letting you go to the um, straight to the boss, each item, the hook shot, even a bottle, because then you can put stuff in a bottle and give it to somebody, and uh, a big sword, a small sword. These weird incremental things is just like Dark Souls, because you're getting one thing that lets you open another thing that lets you open another thing. It Here's something that you've learned that goes straight into, okay, I've got this pattern, I can go forward with that pattern. I see that the hook shot can latch onto things that are wood or mesh like, and I'm like looking for these things, and I like, oh, there's a thing I've never seen before, and I can hook to that, and suddenly I'm in this new area. And it and that pattern goes forward, where if you if you see stuff if you see stuff where people are like, it's called sequence breaking. um, you get somebody into a sequence break and suddenly they get into a situation where they're supposed to have an item. They can't play the game anymore, and they got to figure out how to glitch around that too. And so that's then that brings another adventure in, because it's like, okay, what do I have to find next? I see a crack in the wall. That means I need a bomb. I don't have any bombs, so I've got to go cut some grass. Well, I run into an enemy in the grass. I've got a new adventure going. It's like there's there's small adventures and large adventures. That's what goes all the way through Legend of Zelda and uh, and Dark Souls and a lot of these adventure games, is that you don't have one big adventure, you have small adventures and large adventures.
It's cool.
And that gives you that sense of that gives you that sense of progression without being overwhelmed. Whereas you put yourself something into like um something like something like Rainbow Six, um, where you're basically in a SWAT team and you are going through hallways and trying not to get shot. It's like that. There's not a lot of progression there because the enemy can be anywhere. You don't know exactly what you're looking for. All you can do is be as cautious as physically possible while trying to stay within the time limit of whatever mission you're in. And so it's just it's a constant tension. And
And
so
then the
that doesn't really release until you finish.
right. And then the progression is like I just thought like, how does like Call of Duty or Rainbow Six, like the progression is after the battle, then you level up and you can go back in with whatever like you unlocked.
Yeah, but the difference is Call of Duty is you mowing down a whole bunch of people.
Hmm.
It is the enemy. They're basically enemy waves that are showing up out of nowhere, and you're ducking behind cover and shooting. The
Hmm.
difference between Call of Duty and Rainbow Six is that you get shot once or twice in Call of Duty. You wait for the jam to go away from the edge of your screen, and in Rainbow Six, you get shot. You're shot. Like you're hurting. You're bleeding. There's something wrong, and that's why in a lot of these survival games they'll be putting in bandages or something like that, and that kind of works and kind of doesn't, and they kind of gamify things, but they try to bring a level of realism in through that way. But it in especially in the older ones, if you get shot once, you go from your health is three settings: green, orange, red. That's it. There's no in between. It's you're injured or you're dead.
Yeah.
And so there is very little room for error. And in some of the older, like the Ghost Recon, that's what I'm thinking about. Ghost Recon, you're injured or you're dead. Um, and you're usually in these kind of sprawling places, and so you have no idea if anyone's out there, if they can see you. If they shoot you, you're gone. And so it's extremely realistic, but it's kind of bad for a video game um, because there's not really as subtle a progression there. It's punishment, start over,
Right.
punishment, start over. It's kind of like the old Castlevania stuff. You would die and then you start all the way at the beginning again.
Right. Right.
Which it gave people a challenge, but it wasn't a progressive challenge. It wasn't it there weren't increments. It was you're done, start over.
Hmm.
And so it was a lot more punishing.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. I
where
vaguely remember playing Rainbow Six, and you were on a mission, or yeah, you were dead.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, it's very there. The Tom Clancy stuff is very black and white in some points.
Yeah.
I think that's why Splinter Cell really took off, because not only is it a great kind of a realistic stealth simulator. I guess I would call it, but um, they allowed progression, and if you got shot, you weren't immediately dead. They had a bit of a health bar going on that, and it allowed people to move forward point by point, and there was a coherent narrative structure. So this is a video game. This is not a mission game or a simulator.
Mm.
This is a video game, and it has a real narrative, and you can go through it. It makes sense, and it's coherent. Where a lot of the Rainbow Six and that kind of stuff is like they'll give you this mission briefing, and you don't actually know what's going on. Like, what's the overarching story of this? Like, well, you don't really care. It's like even
Right.
like the Ghost Recon Future Soldier stuff, even that tried to put a storyline in it. Like you're trying to help out with this like resistance group or whatever, and like trying to keep this country from falling. It's like, do you really care though? Like I have a stealth suit. That's awesome. Like that's the only thing I'm paying attention to right now. It's like this plot is too it's trying to be too
Whatever.
gritty.
Yeah.
So there's levels at which people will love things and levels at which people will forget things entirely.
Right.
I don't know any of the plot of any of the Rainbow Six games at all.
And there's little gems there though.
Yeah, there's
Yeah.
little gems. I remember points at which I got through a mission and said, "Oh my gosh, my heart is racing. I was on edge that entire time and I didn't get shot once. That's awesome." That that is a complete victory.
Mhm.
But it takes so much time to get there, you
Right.
forget the rest of the game.
Right. Yes. Yes. Yeah. I remember there was games like that, like I don't know why I thought of Hitman as one kind of like that, where you're halfway you're having fun, but you're halfway stressed the entire time, and then you
Mhm.
freaking get there, and it's like, oh, you get
Yeah.
your reward, and then on to the next level.
Hitman has roughly the same problem where the story itself is kind of forgettable,
Mm-hmm.
but the
Mm-hmm.
levels and layouts and all that strategy stuff is kind of memorable because you're spending so much time like, well, what if I do this? If I tweak this little thing here? And so that pulls in where you're remembering the game more than the story.
Mm.
And that's where something like Legend of Zelda excels, where if you play the Ocarina of Time enough, you remember both. And so
Yeah.
you can like, oh, I got to go to this place now, and I got to go to that place now, and this cutscene's going to happen, and like, oh, I know who I'm gonna meet next. Like, oh, I'm looking forward to this, and like this is the part where I jump over the fence with the horse, and it's like, and there's this big triumphant reveal there. It's like there's it's like watching your favorite movie all over again.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and so that's proper video game narrative balance.
Oh, dude, and then the freaking the soundtrack is like
Yes.
pushes you through. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. You can't do any of this without proper music.
Mm-hmm.
Where like I couldn't tell you for the life of me what the music for Dark Souls is right now. It's like some depressing
Dreary. Yeah.
couple of notes on a piano, ding 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 ding. It's just like, okay, that's sad, but I can tell you this hard part that I struggled through, that I actually achieved. It's like, okay,
Right.
that I can tell you. Whereas in Legend of Zelda, each individual spot has its own music.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, exactly when you're in the
market square or the town.
the market square of the town. When you're in Ganon's castle. When you're in a dungeon. It's
Mm-hmm.
got that creepy thing going on in the background where it's like subtle bongos, like very very light, and it's like you don't know what's going on, and something's around the corner. It's kind of trying to freak you out, but you know where you are in each thing.
So did Dark Souls and Demon Souls that had like no soundtrack?
It did.
Okay.
It did. It just, it was, it falls into the same problem that a lot of Marvel movies have, where they have very generic action background
Mm,
music,
mm,
and so it's all stylized. It's all that kind of same orchestrated, sweeping, piano-y kind of music, but it's all kind of in the background, and it's not really pushing
mhm,
itself into the forefront
mhm,
of your memory. Um, Whereas like all the boss, or most of the boss music in Legend of Zelda is the same, but you know it. Dun 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 dun
mhm.
dun 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 da da da. It's like you can tell what's happening. Like, I'm in a boss battle. I need to run. I don't know what's happening. So uh, they they really incorporated each part. Um, let's see, and another good one that does this is GoldenEye.
Mhm. Okay.
Gold GoldenEye, you know what mission you're on just from closing your eyes. So it's like, okay, I'm in the silo. I'm on I'm on the dam, or um or in the graveyard of statues, or whatever they call that place. But you know what's going on with your eyes closed,
Mhm, mhm.
and uh, because of how interactive that game is with all the sounds and the individual stuff, and you could probably play that game with your eyes closed. Who knows? Because it's a very linear game, but um, its sound design is very compelling,
Okay.
because
Okay.
because there is very little overlap. There's a big differentiation between sounds, and they're all iconic. um, there None of them kind of fall into that generic background music thing,
Mhm.
where it's just like, oh, this is just something that would play behind an action movie. That's like
Right.
what a lot of Michael Bay stuff. It's like, um if you turn on Pirates of the Caribbean, you know who's on the screen. Like this, that's Jack Sparrow's theme right there. And it's like,
Mhm.
you know what's going on. A lot of horror movies do this properly. Like, if you hear the you know somebody is going to be killed by Jason. I think it's Jason, but
Yeah,
the, proper sound design can really make a game
for sure.
where uh, and at the same time, actually, let me put it this way: proper sound design can make a game memorable. Like, it can imprint you. um, Proper gameplay can make the experience better, whereas improper gameplay with good sound design is still okay. That's why GoldenEye took off, because the gameplay of
Mm.
GoldenEye is kind of crappy, because you have one stick in a shooter. Like, you're aiming around like this. It's like, it's really bad by today's standards.
Yeah,
But
depending on, I mean, do you think people like, depending on your preferences, I mean, it can still be good, but if you're focused on like, let's see how the gameplay is, you'll probably experience it uh, less so
yeah,
than, yeah, yeah.
like, I had to replay the game through a Doom emulator, and that's on my channel. I replayed GoldenEye through a Doom emulator, and some of the aspects, they actually got it pretty accurate, but other ones, they dropped the ball. But it's a mod made by some third party guy. It was never meant to be, AAA quality. But I had to play that through that, because I tried to play it myself again with those kind of old janky controls, and it just doesn't hold up anymore
Mm.
because I'm too used to being able to look and aim separately, to to move and aim separately, not look and aim. that's
Mm.
that's the same thing. But to move and aim separately. And um and Doom itself, you couldn't look up, you couldn't look down, you couldn't aim at anything. It was, you were on one plane. um and I heard this explained a while back. Doom is basically two-dimensional all the way around. All the three-dimensional aspects of Doom and those kind of games is entirely an illusion. What you're seeing is all flat, all of it. And uh, so the
Yeah, I hadn't played Doom.
well, if you ever watch it, played, you're looking at a flat thing, even though it looks like there's a 90-degree bend here and here's a wall. That's a lie. There is no wall there. That is also here. It's just projected here. It's so weird how they got all that to work, because it causes a whole bunch of, it allows you to save resources, so you're not making 3D environments and making everything like giant megabytes of information, where you that would be the case in something like Legend of Zelda. Like there's 3D meshes going on there and everything. Um, but in Doom, with everything being flat, everything can be loaded in. Like if you if you downloaded something that was like a mod to Doom, most of it would probably be in kilobytes, because a lot of it's code or pictures or something. And and it's old and small. And but uh the workarounds people did with this stuff makes it amazing. Like, if you talked to these original programmers, and then you showed them what people did with it later, in making 3D environments out of the things that they made out of things that were completely flat, it would blow it not would, it does blow their minds because they had to program all of this stuff. And so, like I was saying, with gameplay gameplay attributes to the experience. um, Music and storyline attribute to memorability. No, storyline attributes to memorability, and music attributes to imprinting. And so you will get a bigger wave of nostalgia if you come into a room and that music plays. Whereas if you're just playing the game that you're used to playing and no music turns on, you're just playing the game. Like, you'll get a wave of memories the moment the music plays, and it's like all the other times that you've entered this room and that music is turned on, that'll all play back. But when you're not playing the game, a good storyline will help you remember the game.
Right.
And gameplay will help you interact with that memory. If i if i had no ability to aim properly in the original GoldenEye, I would not have the same affinity I did for it, because I used to be able to stealth some of those missions, and that's not possible anymore, uh, through stuff like Doom. Like, there's very minimal amounts of stealth you can do in Doom.
Yeah.
So because if you I think it's you hold the right bumper or whatever, and you see a crosshair, and then you can pull the stick up, and it'll aim. It'll aim with you, but it's kind of like reversed, but whatever. So, but if you can aim, and you can take like a headshot on a guard with a silenced pistol, and you can actually get through this level, and nobody knows you're there. And that made me fall in love with stealth just from that game, where a whole bunch of other people would have just blasted their way through that game. And I've done that because I went back to it with the original graphics and everything, and I found the aiming thing too cumbersome, and I tried to stealth it and nothing worked. So I just had to blast my way through the game, and suddenly all of my memories and nostalgia left. All of my enjoyment was gone because the gameplay didn't work anymore. So you've got it's a proper balance of all of these aspects
Right. So
because the game is experiential.
right, right. I think that's probably, I mean, they're all important. I think the one I notice most is gameplay.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's definitely the one, the first person that, like, the experience. The
Yeah.
first person, like, what am I going through, I guess, is the one that sticks out to me the most.
Let me give you an inverse example of something that completely flips this on its head and does a terrible job. And because it's Hideo Kojima, everybody praises it. But Death Stranding.
Okay.
It is a walking simulator
Have not
where
played
you
it.
deliver packages and do very little else. And if you're ever in danger, you're probably just going to die. It's just like, and and when you get forward in the story, none of it makes any sense, and so you don't care about the story because it's just frustrating,
Mm.
and so you don't want to remember the story. And then the rest of the gameplay is you're playing through all this stuff, and then it's got this sweeping music in the background. It's just like you just made the perfect forgettable game.
Besides, I mean, sometimes games do that, and it's humorous almost. Like
Yeah.
the the story's so weird, just like flips you in places that you did not expect. Like when Metal Gear Solid, uh, I think it was the fourth one, where you went into the game simulator all of a sudden. Or
Yeah,
like, but a
they
game that
started
would do
breaking the
that.
fourth wall, and
Yeah, yeah, a
yeah.
game that does that like every 10 minutes, like that's that's its own thing, or memorable in its, like, a game that just continues to do that. So I don't know if Death Stranding was something
No,
like that.
Death Stranding. There was okay. So here's what people will remember Death Stranding for: ridiculous
Right.
names.
Mm.
The names were just stupid. Death Stranding by itself is a stupid name. You can't tell me otherwise. It's just like it doesn't make any sense. Even in context of the story, it makes less sense because the aspect of this weird alien kind of soul snatching thing doesn't make sense by itself.
Yeah.
So the and the names put in there is like dark. It's like dark, wet. I can't even remember the names. They're that dumb. Like hot wet man. It's like that's a name. You
Why'd you
named
do
a
that?
character this.
Why'd you do it? Yeah. Yeah.
uh I gotta look it up. Death Stranding.
Because Death Stranding, like, I heard that game came out. Is that the one with oh gosh, the guy from The Walking Dead, the one that I thought got canceled? Oh, that was Silent. Was that
No,
Silent?
that was PT.
Okay.
PT got canceled. It was the horror game that he was going to do. That probably would have made more sense because it's a horror game. Those are supposed to be weird and scary. But yeah, so somebody actually Polygon actually did a whole list of A to Z of Death Stranding weirdness. And it's just weird all the way.
Really?
And do you know why? It's because of exactly what what Andrea was saying about what happened with episode 1, 2, and 3 of Star Wars.
Oh,
Nobody would nobody
somebody
would
got
say
divorced.
no. Nobody would say no to
Right. Some.
to George Lucas.
Right.
And so no one would say no to
Right.
Hideo Kojima. So
Right.
he just did everything he wanted to. And it's like, oh yeah, I made my perfect game. They're like, oh, okay, now I understand why. Because it's everything you wanted and nothing anybody else wanted.
Didn't have the constraints. Right. Right.
And so there's something to be said. There's something to be said for vision,
Mm-hmm.
for an artistic vision, but you also have to have a balance of, okay, but does anyone actually need this story?
Right.
Is it teaching anybody anything?
Right.
So it when I'm writing a book right now,
Mm-hmm.
and I told myself, I want to write the book that I want to read. Okay, well then I had somebody else read that.
Right.
Somebody who I allowed to be completely critical, and he loved it, and I was shocked. I was like expecting a lot more criticism because he's very open, and I was like, okay, so that means that I've done my job, and that there's an audience for this. I don't know if he did that for this. For Death Stranding, it's like, I'm sorry, if you had
Right.
asked somebody if having a ghost sensing baby strapped to your chest is a good idea, I think a lot of people would say no.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm just imagining like like one of these like Hideo Kojima or one of these like artistic guys just like frolicking through the office like shooting ideas out to everyone
And
and
everyone
happen.
saying yes, that's a great idea, because they don't want to they don't want to upset him or make him leave or whatever.
Right.
It's
And
just
I
like,
mean there is like I don't know how much like there definitely is something to be said for vision or like that childlike like let's go there like
good imagination.
right.
Yeah, but it's the same thing that I've been saying for stuff like story interpretation. Put it in context. If none of it makes any sense, and nothing is learned, it's pointless. And so if it's the shotgunning of that postmodernism does, where you bring out an idea and everybody claws away at that idea until it's dead. Or or we can bring out an idea and attach it to its history and give it context and say, okay, here's the idea in full context, and people go, oh, now I don't hate it as much. um, for example, it's like I keep bringing this up, but I bring it up because it matters to me. It's like the idea of the curtains are blue. I bring it up all the time
Mm-hmm.
because there is a level at which things shouldn't be analyzed because it doesn't go anywhere. You're just wasting your time analyzing a pair of blue curtains that somebody just mentioned to describe the room. That's it. I just want to tell you what the room looks like. There's nothing deep and profound about this. The curtains are blue. That's it.
Okay, so one thing I actually, when we had finished our talk, something was eating at me,
Yeah.
like, and because the only thing I would say is if I like, and something like I guess I've learned is just knowing that there's the like story, but being able to tell people like, I guess my proclivity would be to tell people, ah, like wanting them to know, but also being like, good for you if it was good for them, like their interpretation basically.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and I went into this when it came up in the other talk, because
Hmm.
it was how do you react to somebody approaching you and
Right.
saying, this really made an effect on me and it was not something you intended at all.
Right. Yes.
Now, there's a difference between not intending it at all and disagreeing with it completely.
Right. Right. Yes. Yeah. And I think once you say like you gauge from the situation. I mean, is part of it, but yeah. There's definitely a difference between uh somebody's idea is something and like whether it's completely wrong, like you disagree with it completely, or
Yeah.
whether
And,
it's yeah.
and the other side of the curtains are blue is, how is a raven like a writing desk? The it it describes something that is supposed to be overanalyzed because it's completely absurd.
Right.
And it causes, instead of stopping the feedback loop of, well, it could be this or it could be this or it could be this, that their curtains of blue stops a feedback loop. But how is a raven like a writing desk starts a feedback loop. And um suddenly it's like, I can't stop bringing him up. He was so awesome. So Voth gave an example one time of brown.
Mhm.
Okay,
Give me
crap is
1 second.
brown. Yeah.
Okay.
So crap is brown, and a chair is brown,
Mhm.
and beef is brown. Okay, you only want to eat one of those.
Yes.
You do not want to eat a chair.
Yes.
And so brown, in context, is edible, but only in one context of those. And so that's why I said you have to bring in context for everything. Outside of context, things don't actually exist because they become pointless because there's no relating.
Right.
Um, and so it brings in the circular arguments of what does this dragon mean? It's like, no, that there's no meaning to this dragon. It's there to fight him. That's it.
It's used.
There's no big existential meaning to that.
Right. Okay. So what I thought of when you said things have to be in their context to make sense, like I thought of
Mm,
like uh a shoe
yeah,
or a shoelace. Like that's for stringing in your shoe and tying it. Like
yeah. So it doesn't fall off your foot.
right, right, right. And yeah, that helps it make sense. No, I definitely get that.